Welcome to Miss Scarlett. Subscribe and don't miss out on Patreon. Have fun! The dormitory erupted in a wave of hilarity, like the theater on opening night, as the cards resounded upon the table. The decisive moment had arrived, with the last hand revealed, and their fates intertwined with this turn of fate.
A royal flush!
Dave exclaimed triumphantly, his muscular forearm slamming the table as the cards marched into formation. Defeat hummed a mournful tune on the lips of his companions, save for Julian, who remained immobile. His eyes traced the intricate patterns on his cards, his face petrified, for his loss would cost him dearly. "Oh, Julian!" Dave's voice boomed, filled with wicked delight. "It's time to pay up, my friend." A nervous twitch animated Julian's thin fingers. They retreated, disappearing into his curly hair. His original confidence now lay shattered, akin to ancient pottery, fragile, but it had felt so invincible before this moment. He found himself drowning in a sea of disbelief, his eyes beseeching his roommates for reprieve. However, he faced only a chorus of silent expectancy. "There's got to be something else I can do instead." Mike shook his head, already pulling out his phone. "Nope. The Halloween party is tomorrow night, and you, my friend, are going as the prettiest girl on campus." He started scrolling through costume options. "I'm texting my sister right now for help with your transformation." The word hung in the air, and Julian felt a strange flutter in his chest, something beyond the expected embarrassment. He dismissed it quickly, focusing instead on his indignation. "This is ridiculous," he muttered, pushing back from the table. His navy blue t-shirt and faded jeans suddenly felt like armor he would soon be forced to surrender. "I'm going to look absurd." "That's the point," laughed Chris, the third roommate. "Halloween is about being something you're not. Just think of it as committed costume work." Julian retreated to his room, closing the door behind him. Leaning against it, he caught his reflection in the mirror mounted on his closet. His angular face, broad shoulders, and stubbled jaw stared back at him. There was nothing remotely feminine about his appearance. Yet as he studied himself, something unexpected stirred within him, a curious anticipation that he couldn't quite name. The next evening arrived with alarming speed. Mike's sister Amanda burst into their apartment with several shopping bags and a determined gleam in her eye. "Your canvas has arrived," she announced to the room, dropping her supplies on the coffee table. She approached Julian with the clinical assessment of an artist. "You've got good bone structure. This might work better than I thought." The next 3 hours passed in a blur of activity. First came the humiliation of having his body hair trimmed, then the awkward process of being fitted into strange undergarments that Amanda insisted were necessary for the right silhouette. Julian endured it all, his face burning with embarrassment, while his roommates snickered and took candid photos. Yet when Amanda finally held up the emerald cocktail dress, something shifted in Julian's perception. The fabric caught the light, shimmering with a depth that reminded him of deep forest pools. Without thinking, he reached out to touch it.
"It's beautiful,"
he murmured. Amanda smiled. "Wait until you're in it." The dress hugged his body in ways that should have felt wrong, but somehow didn't. The padding and shapewear created the illusion of curves where there were none. Gold, strappy heels added inches to his height, forcing him to walk more deliberately, more gracefully. But it was the makeup that truly transformed him. Amanda worked with concentration, applying foundation, contouring his features, adding subtle eyeshadow that made his hazel eyes appear larger more expressive. "Close your eyes," she instructed, wielding an eyelash curler. "And stop flinching. I'm not going to blind you." Julian complied, feeling the gentle pressure against his eyelid. Something about the vulnerability of the position, the strange intimacy of having someone else transform his face, sent a shiver down his spine. When Amanda finished, she turned him toward the full-length mirror in the hallway. "Take a look at the new you." Julian opened his eyes and stopped breathing. The person looking back at him was a stranger, a beautiful woman with auburn hair styled into soft waves, framing a face that was somehow both his and not his. The emerald dress accentuated a waist he didn't know he had, flowing over hips that seemed to have appeared from nowhere. "Holy shit," Dave whispered from behind him. "You look good. Like, really good." Julian couldn't speak. He was transfixed by his reflection, by the strange rightness he felt seeing himself this way. His mind struggled to reconcile the profound disconnect between what he had always seen in the mirror and what he was seeing now.
"What's my story?"
he finally asked, his voice oddly soft.
"Your story?"
Chris repeated.
"If anyone asks at the party, who am I supposed to be?"
Amanda smiled knowingly. "You're Juliana, exchange student from California. You're studying art history, and you have excellent taste in shoes." She winked, adjusting the strap of one gold heel.
"Juliana,"
he repeated, tasting the name. It felt like a key unlocking something long hidden. The party was in full swing when they arrived. Music pulsed through the crowded house, colored lights flashing over the costumed revelers. Juliana for tonight, hesitated at the threshold, sudden panic threatening to overwhelm her. "I can't do this," she whispered to Mike, clutching his arm. "Everyone will know."
"Trust me, in this lighting and with that makeup, nobody will guess," Mike reassured her. "Just keep your voice soft and stay in character."
Taking a deep breath, Juliana stepped into the party. The first hour was terrifying. She clung to her roommates, hyper-aware of every movement, every glance cast in her direction. But something unexpected happened as the night progressed. People, strangers, began approaching her. Men offered drinks, asked her to dance, complimented her dress. Women chatted easily with her about fashion and music, sharing makeup tips and complaints about their courses. No one suspected. No one saw through the emerald dress and carefully applied makeup to the person she had been just hours before. And in that anonymity, Juliana found a strange freedom. By midnight, she was dancing, the gold heels kicked off, the wooden floor cool beneath her feet. The emerald dress swirled around her legs as she moved to the music with an abandon Julian had never allowed himself. She felt lighter, freer, more authentic than she ever had before. When a tall guy in a vampire costume asked her name, she answered without hesitation. Juliana. The name felt right on her lips, like coming home to a place she didn't know she'd been missing. The party eventually wound down, and Juliana returned to the apartment with her roommates, their teasing comments washing over her without impact. She was lost in her own thoughts, in the strange revelation that had occurred not on the dance floor or during the conversations, but in that first moment before the mirror. Later, after everyone had gone to bed, she stood alone in the bathroom, slowly removing the makeup Amanda had applied. Layer by layer, Julian began to re-emerge, and with each swipe of the makeup remover, an inexplicable grief grew within her chest. When the last of the mascara was gone, she stared at her reflection. Julian was back, ordinary and male, in a bathrobe with his auburn hair mussed from where the styling had been brushed out. But something had changed. Something fundamental had shifted in her understanding of herself. "Juliana," she whispered to her reflection, and the name still felt right. The weeks following Halloween passed in a blur of classes and assignments, but beneath the routine of college life, something was stirring. Julian found himself distracted, his thoughts constantly returning to the night of the party, to the feeling of being Juliana. Late one night, while his roommates were out at a basketball game, he opened his laptop and, after a moment's hesitation, typed into the search bar, "Women's clothing online." The screen filled with options, endless pages of dresses, blouses, skirts. Julian's heart raced as he clicked through the categories, finally settling on a soft, pastel pink blouse. His finger hovered over the Add to Cart button for a long moment before he pressed it decisively. The package arrived 3 days later, discreetly labeled. Julian waited until he was alone in the apartment before opening it with trembling hands. The blouse was even prettier in person, its fabric whispering against his skin as he carefully removed it from its packaging. In the privacy of his bedroom, he slipped it on. The fit wasn't perfect, too tight across his shoulders, loose around the waist, but the sensation of the soft fabric, the delicate pearl buttons, the way the pastel color complemented his auburn hair, it felt right in a way his normal wardrobe never had. That first purchase became a gateway. Over the next few weeks, more packages arrived. An A-line skirt in navy blue, a pair of low-heeled pumps, a simple cotton dress in a cheerful yellow. Julian carefully hid these treasures at the back of his closet, bringing them out only when he was certain to be alone. During these private moments, Julian became Juliana again. She would carefully apply the makeup techniques Amanda had taught her, style her auburn hair as best she could, and dress in her growing collection of women's clothes. With each transformation, the sense of rightness grew stronger, the disconnect between her inner self and outer appearance more painfully apparent. 2 months after Halloween, Julian sat in a campus coffee shop, ostensibly studying, but actually researching on his laptop. The words on the screen both terrified and comforted him. Gender dysphoria, transgender, transition. Finding something interesting? Julian started, quickly minimizing the browser window as a classmate from his economics course slid into the seat across from him. He forced a smile. Just doing some research. The classmate, Bethany, raised an eyebrow but didn't press. The midterm's going to be brutal, isn't it? Julian nodded, grateful for the change of subject. As they discussed the upcoming exam, he found himself studying Bethany's appearance, not with attraction but with careful attention, the way she gestured with manicured hands, the simple but elegant style of her clothing, the subtle makeup enhancing her features. When she left, Julian reopened the browser window and added to his search, "How to tell people you're transgender." The decision wasn't sudden. It came gradually, building over weeks of reflection, research, and increasingly frequent moments as Juliana. By spring break, Julian had made up his mind. This wasn't about a lost bet or a Halloween costume. This was about becoming who she truly was. She began with her roommates, gathering them in the living room one evening after dinner. "I have something important to tell you guys," she began, her voice steady despite the frantic beating of her heart. She was dressed in her usual male attire, jeans and a green button-down shirt, for what she hoped would be one of the last times.
"Remember Halloween?"
Dave snorted.
How could we forget? You were the belle of the ball.
Julian took a deep breath.
That night changed things for me. It helped me understand something I think I've known for a long time, but never had the words for.
She paused, looking at each of them in turn. I'm transgender. I'm a woman, and I've decided to transition. The silence that followed seemed to stretch for eternity. Julian held her breath, waiting for judgment, rejection, or worse. Finally, Mike spoke.
So, you're saying the bet actually helped you figure yourself out?
Julian nodded, relieved at the simple question.
In a way, yes. It gave me permission to experience something I'd been curious about, but too afraid to try.
Dave leaned forward, his expression serious.
Are you sure about this? It's a big change. I've never been more certain of anything, Julian replied. I've been living as Juliana in private for months now. It feels right in a way that being Julian never did.
Chris, who had been quiet until now, finally spoke.
What do you need from us?
The question was so unexpected, so supportive in its simplicity, that Julian felt tears prick at her eyes. Your friendship, your support, and... She smiled slightly. Maybe help figuring out where to donate all my men's clothes. The conversation continued long into the night. There were questions, concerns, moments of awkwardness, but beneath it all was an undercurrent of acceptance that Julian, now firmly thinking of herself as Juliana, had scarcely dared to hope for. The next morning, Juliana woke with a sense of purpose. The path ahead would be challenging, but for the first time, she was moving towards something rather than away from her true self. Her first step was practical, a complete wardrobe overhaul. With Amanda's eager assistance, Juliana spent a weekend shopping, filling bags with clothes that fit not just her body, but her emerging sense of style. She gravitated toward bold prints, classic silhouettes, and colors that complemented her auburn hair, which she decided to grow out from its short college boy cut. You're going to need a better skincare routine, Amanda advised as they browsed through a cosmetics store. And lessons for everyday makeup. What we did for Halloween was dramatic, but you'll want something more subtle for daily wear. Juliana nodded, absorbing every tip and suggestion. She felt like a student learning a new language, the language of femininity that most women had been absorbing since childhood. The physical transformation began gradually. Juliana started hormone therapy under medical supervision, watching with a mixture of awe and impatience as subtle changes appeared. Her skin softened, body fat redistributed, and her emotional landscape shifted in ways both challenging and illuminating. Her auburn hair, freed from regular cutting, grew past her ears, then to her shoulders, the color catching sunlight with rich dimension she'd never appreciated before. She learned to style it in soft waves that framed her increasingly feminine features. 6 months into her transition, Juliana stood before the mirror in her bedroom, dressed in a crimson wrap dress that accentuated her developing curves. Gold earrings caught the light as she turned her head, examining her reflection from different angles. Her nude pumps, now a signature part of her style, added height and changed her posture in a way that felt empowering. Margot, she said suddenly to her reflection. The name had come to her a few weeks ago, rolling around in her mind with increasing insistence. Juliana had been a bridge, a transitional identity that had served its purpose. But Margot, elegant, distinctive, her own choice rather than a feminine version of her dead name, felt like the final piece clicking into place. My name is Margot, she repeated, more confidently this time. The next day, she gathered her roommates once again. "I've chosen a new name," she announced.
"Margot."
Dave tested it out.
"Margot, I like it. It suits you."
"Margot it is," Chris agreed with a smile. The official process of changing her name took time. Paperwork filed, court dates scheduled, explanations given to professors and university administrators. But in her daily life, Margot became real immediately, her friends adapting to the new name with only occasional slips. By the following Halloween, 1 year after the fateful party, Margot had settled into her authentic self. The emerald dress that had started it all hung in her closet, a memento of the beginning of her journey. The annual Halloween party was being held at the same house, and Margot felt a strange symmetry as she prepared to attend, this time as herself rather than in costume. She chose a lavender cocktail dress with a flowing skirt and paired it with her favorite nude pumps. A delicate silver necklace completed the outfit. As she applied her makeup, now with practiced skill, Margot reflected on the year of transformation. There had been challenges, certainly. Not every relationship had survived her transition. Family reactions had been mixed, ranging from immediate acceptance to ongoing struggle. She'd faced bewildered looks, intrusive questions, and occasionally outright hostility, but there had also been profound joy in finally living authentically. New friendships had formed with people who knew her only as Margot. Her academic performance had improved as the energy once spent on hiding her true self was redirected toward her studies, and most importantly, the disconnect between her inner and outer selves had healed.
"Ready to make your grand entrance?"
Mike asked, poking his head into her room.
"Car's waiting."
Margot smiled, picking up her clutch. "Absolutely." The party was much like the one the year before. Same house, similar decorations, many of the same people. But everything else had changed. This time, Margot walked in with confidence, greeting acquaintances, accepting compliments on her dress with ease. Several hours into the party, she found herself in the kitchen, taking a break from the noise and heat of the main room. A tall man in a simple vampire costume, reminiscent of the one from last year, approached, offering her a bottle of water. "Thanks," she said, accepting it gratefully. He smiled.
"I hope this isn't too forward, but haven't we met before? You look familiar."
Margot hesitated only briefly. "We might have. I was at this party last year."
"That must be it."
He nodded.
"I'm Daniel."
"Margot," she replied, extending her hand. As they chatted, Margot felt a strange sense of closure. Last year, she had been someone playing a role. This year, she was simply herself. When Daniel asked for her number before they parted, Margot gave it without hesitation. Her journey wasn't about finding romance, but she was open to connections that honored who she truly was. Later that night, Margot stood on the balcony of her apartment, looking out at the campus spread below her. The cool autumn air brushed against her skin, and she wrapped her arms around herself, the lavender fabric of her dress soft beneath her fingers. A year ago, a lost bet had forced her to confront a truth she'd been avoiding her entire life. What had been intended as humiliation had instead become liberation, setting her on a path to authenticity that, despite its challenges, she wouldn't trade for anything. In her bedroom, the emerald dress hung preserved in her closet alongside a carefully cultivated wardrobe, evidence of her journey and testament to her truth. The collection of clothes in every shade from crimson to lavender wasn't just fashion. It was affirmation of her identity, each piece chosen with intention rather than obligation. The following morning, Margot woke to sunshine streaming through her window. She stretched contentedly, then moved to her closet to select the day's outfit. Her hand passed over the neatly arranged blouses, skirts, and dresses before settling on a teal blouse and charcoal pencil skirt. She paired them with her signature nude pumps and a statement necklace of interlocking gold circles. Her morning routine had become a form of meditation, the careful application of makeup, styling her now shoulder-length auburn hair, selecting accessories that expressed her mood. These weren't acts of disguise, but of revelation, each choice revealing another facet of who she truly was. As she prepared for another day of classes, Margot caught sight of herself in the mirror. The woman who looked back at her was poised, confident, and authentic. The disconnect between inner and outer selves had healed, replaced by a harmony she'd once thought impossible. The journey hadn't been easy, nor was it complete. There would always be challenges, adjustments, moments of doubt. But standing there in her carefully chosen outfit, auburn hair framing her face, Margot knew with absolute certainty that she was moving forward as her true self, a self discovered through a lost bet, but embraced through courage and conviction. She picked up her bag, checked her reflection one last time, and stepped out to face the day not as someone hiding behind a costume, but as Margot in all her authentic glory. The emerald dress that had started it all remained in her closet, a reminder of beginnings and transformations, while she continued writing the story of who she was always meant to be. 2 years into her transition, Margot graduated with honors. As she walked across the stage in her cap and gown, a floral dress in coral pink visible beneath the academic regalia, she heard her friends cheering. Looking out at the crowd, she spotted Dave, Chris, and Mike, her former roommates who had become her strongest allies, along with Amanda, whose makeup skills had helped launch her journey. After the ceremony, they gathered for photos, Margot's auburn hair now falling in soft waves past her shoulders, catching the sunlight with warm highlights. Her nude pumps, the same style she had come to favor throughout her transition, peeked out beneath her gown.
Who would have thought a poker game would change everything? Dave mused as they reminisced over dinner that evening.
Margot smiled, fingering the delicate gold necklace at her throat. Sometimes life's biggest changes come from the most unexpected places. The restaurant they'd chosen was upscale, a celebration of their graduation and new beginnings. Margot felt perfectly at ease in her element, her coral dress complementing both her auburn hair and the confident woman she had become. The hostess had addressed her as "ma'am" without a second glance, a small affirmation that still brought a quiet joy. "What's next for you?" Amanda asked, sipping her champagne.
"New York, right?"
Margot nodded. "I've accepted a position with that publishing house I interned with last summer. I start in August."
"The city won't know what hit it,"
Mike said with a grin. As they toasted to futures bright with possibility, Margot reflected on the journey that had brought her to this moment. From the terrified person in an emerald dress at a Halloween party to the confident woman she'd become, each step had been both challenging and affirming. Her apartment in New York was small but perfect, a studio in a pre-war building with large windows and hardwood floors. Margot furnished it carefully, choosing pieces that reflected her aesthetic. Clean lines, warm colors, touches of gold. Her closet, though limited by the apartment's size, contained a carefully curated collection of clothes that expressed her personal style, from work-appropriate blouses and skirts to elegant dresses for evenings out. The publishing house where she worked valued her editorial eye and commitment to diverse voices. Her colleagues knew her only as Margot, the woman with auburn hair who favored bold prints and classic silhouettes. Her past was her own to share or keep private as she chose. On her nightstand sat a small framed photo from that graduation day. Margot surrounded by friends, radiant in her coral dress, auburn hair catching the light. Beside it lay a simple gold bracelet, a gift from her parents when they had finally come to accept her as their daughter. The journey hadn't ended with her transition. In many ways, it was just beginning. But now Margot moved through the world as herself, her outer appearance finally reflecting her inner truth. The emerald dress that had catalyzed her transformation remained carefully preserved, a reminder of beginnings and the unexpected ways life leads us to our authentic selves. In her small but elegant apartment, with the sounds of the city drifting through the open window, Margot opened her journal and began to write. Not about the past or the journey, but about the present and all that lay ahead. Adventures, challenges, and opportunities to be faced not in costume, but as her true self. The emerald dress hung in her closet, a keepsake of transformation. But it was Margot, in her carefully chosen clothes, her auburn hair framing her face, her nude pumps carrying her forward, who stepped confidently into each new day, grateful for the lost bet that had helped her find herself.
Thanks for watching, my girlies! Be sure to check out Patreon for more!